Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. And also, the Pigs Playing Magic Kickstarter has launched, so make sure you check that out. The Kickstarter campaign is going to last for 30 days, and after that, the playmat will no longer be available for purchase. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, on today's episode, I've got an exciting $44 deck tech for you on, let's just say, a commander that has a lack of color identity. Yeah, let's go with that. Anyways, let's jump into it. So the ground rules for my deck techs are as follows. The budget is $50 or less, and that's an overall deck cost. So that cost includes shipping as well as commanders as long as they're $10 or less, but basic lands will not be included in that price. On my deck techs, I'm going to take you through the strategy, the tactics, and how the deck wins. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Zane, a general tier patron who's been supporting this channel for over a year now. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Zane. And for the personalized deck tech, Zane chose Hope of Ghirapur with a theme of being able to win with Voltron, but also having ways to win outside of that. Hope of Ghirapur is a 1/1 Thopter with flying for 1. It has sacrifice Hope of Ghirapur until your next turn. Target player who is dealt combat damage by Hope of Ghirapur this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So this is an evasive commander with some utility that we can get on turn 1. We can make it deadlier and deadlier throughout the game, but we're also going to have other ways to win as well. So the strategy for this deck is pretty straightforward. We're going to suit up Hope of Ghirapur and get other big threats out. So we're going to be able to overwhelm our opponents with our commander as well as other things too. And how to win with this deck is pretty straightforward. We're going to do it through either commander damage or with our army of Eldrazi. There are plenty of budget Eldrazi out there that are still extremely deadly. But as always, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, color more. First up, we've got some mana dorks that cost 2 and tap for a colorless with Mannequin, Hedron Crawler, and Milliken. On top of that, Milliken also mills us for 1 when it taps for that colorless. That really isn't that relevant for this deck, but efficient mana ramp is huge. So we're also going to be running some mana rocks that cost 2 and tap for 1 with Guardian Idol, Prismatic Lens, and Mind Stone. Guardian Idol does come into play tap, but we can also turn into a 2/2 until the end of the turn for 2. And then Mind Stone we can pay 1 to tap and sacrifice to draw a card. Next up we've got Vladimir, which costs 3, is a 2/2, and it taps for colorless. Paying 3 mana to tap something for 2 is a fantastic rate. And we're also running Sisay's Ring and Urgolem's Eye, which each cost 4 and tap for colorless. So they might not be as efficient as Vladimir, but they're a little safer since they're not creatures. And then we've got Hedron Archive, which essentially does the exact same thing, but we can also pay 2 to tap and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. Finally, there's Dreamstone Hedron, which does this in a bigger way. It costs 6, it taps for colorless, and we can pay 3 to tap and sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. Again, our commander might only cost 1, but we've got some other big threats that cost quite a bit more. We've got some other ways to help us out as well, so let's move on to tactic number 2, less is more. First up, we've got Foundry Inspector, which says artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And then Jori's Familiar is similar. It says historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so that counts artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. In many situations, mana reduction can actually be better than mana ramp. These allow us to cast many of our spells at either a reduced cost or even for free. And the less mana that we have to use for spells, the more mana we can use for other things. Let's talk about some of those things in tactic number 3, start simple. First up, there's Shuko, which is an equipment that costs 1 and it costs 0 to equip, and it says equip creature gets +1/+0. So once this is on the field, it effectively pumps our commander by 1. Power is definitely the most important thing to our commander since it has evasion and we're trying to kill with commander damage. And then we've got Ghostfire Blade, which is another fantastic piece of equipment. It costs 1 and it costs 3 to equip, but it costs 2 less to equip if it's targeting a colorless creature. Because our commander and every single other creature in this deck is colorless, it only costs 1 to equip. And +2/+2 for a 1 mana equip is pretty good. So we're also running Bone Splitter, which has equip 1 and it gives equip creature +2/+0. Next up, there's Darksteel Axe, which is pretty much the exact same thing as Bone Splitter, but it costs 1 more to equip because it's indestructible. And then Trusted Machete costs 2 to equip and it's going to get +2/+1. Next up, there's Prying Blade, which costs 2 to equip and it only gives +1/+0, but it helps us out in another way. It says whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure. So now when we hit with our commander, we get some temporary ramp as well. And finally, we're running Hero's Blade, which is a fantastic piece of equipment for this deck. It's going to give +3/+2 and it has equip 4. But it also says whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it. So essentially this equipment can attach for free when we cast or recast our commander. But outside these standard pieces of equipment, we're running a lot more. So now let's move on to tactic number 4, suit up. First up, we've got Golem Skin Gauntlets, which has equip 2, and it says equip creature gets +1/+0 for each equipment that's attached to it. So the more things that we stack onto our commander, the better this gets. Another card that gets better throughout the game is Banshee's Blade. It has equip 2 and says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put a charge counter on this card. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on Banshee's Blade. And then Blackblade Reforged has equip 7, but it also has equipped legendary creature for 3, and it says equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So again, the longer the game goes on, the more lands we're going to have, and the bigger our commander gets. Next up, there's Trepanation Blade, which says whenever equipped creature attacks, defending player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card. The creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each card revealed this way. That player puts the revealed cards into their graveyard. So depending on our luck, this can either help us out a little or a lot. And then there's Sword of Vengeance, which has equip 3, and it says equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Those are all fantastic keywords, especially since our commander already has flying. Next up, we've got Loxodon Warhammer, which is going to get +3/+0 and Trample and Lifelink. So this can help us get damage through as well as pad our life total. And finally, we've got 3 ways to double up our damage with Fire Shrieker, Grappling Hook, and Inquisitor's Flail. Both Fire Shrieker and Grappling Hook are going to give double strike, which is fantastic on our commander. On top of that, Grappling Hook says whenever equipped creature attacks, you may have target creature block at this turn of Fable. So this can help us out with some targeted removal as well. And then Inquisitor's Flail is similar to these, but also different. It says if equipped creature would deal combat damage, it deals double that damage instead. And if another creature would deal combat damage to a equipped creature, it deals double that damage to a equipped creature instead. So this is kind of like double strike, but not, so it can actually double up on double strike. So if our commander were to hit for, say, 6, but we have double strike and Inquisitor's Flail on it, then it's going to hit for 12, and then double that again, so 24. So yeah, in combination, these can easily turn our commander into a one-shot kill. But again, keep in mind that there is that downside to Inquisitor's Flail, but since Hope of Ghirapur has flying, that definitely helps us evade creatures. Overall, these are extremely valuable cards in the deck, and we're happy whenever we can get them out. But speaking of valuable cards, let's move on to tactic number 5, Value Town. First up, we've got Brass Squire, which has tap, attach target equipment you control to target creature you control. So this is essentially a repeatable way to skip out on any equipped cost. And then we've got Chief of the Foundry, which gives other artifact creatures we control +1/+1. So it's a fantastic anthem for all of our artifact creatures, including our commander. And then there's Manifold Key, which is a very flexible card in this deck. It has pay 1 and tap it to untap another target artifact, and pay 3 and tap it. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. So at a base level, this can be used to untap our commander or to help it get through. But we can actually also use this as a mana rock if we've got any mana rocks in play that tap for 2 or more. But perhaps the best way to utilize all of our artifacts is Clock of Omens. It says tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, untap target artifact. So as long as we've got 1 mana rock or mana dork in play, this essentially turns all of our artifacts into pseudo mana rocks. We can utilize them by tapping them to untap our mana rocks or mana dorks and tap them again. And again, we can also just use this to untap our commander, so again, pseudo vigilance too. It's an extremely valuable card that can help us out in a ton of situations. But how do we actually get to all these great cards? Let's find out now in tactic number 6, Scrap Metal. First up, there's Key to the City, which we can tap and discard a card, and up to 1 target creature can't be blocked this turn, and whenever Key to the City becomes untapped, we can pay 2. If we do, we draw a card. So it's a great way to make our commander unblockable and also to loot. And then there's Bag of Holding, which says whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard and pay 2 and tap it to draw a card, then discard a card. We can also pay 4 and tap it and sacrifice it to return all cards exiled with Bag of Holding back to their owner's hand. So this is card selection at first and then card advantage when we sacrifice it. Next up, we've got Rogue's Gloves, which is an equipment that says whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Again, Hope of Ghirapur already has evasion, so this is really going to come in handy. And then there's Tome of Legends, which comes into play with 1 page counter on it, and it says whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on Tome of Legends. We can pay 1 and tap it to remove a page counter from it to draw a card. Again, one of the main focuses of this deck is to attack with our commander, so we're going to get a ton of page counters on this. Next up, there's Raiding Post, which is an extremely versatile card with a lot of text, so here we go. It has pay 1 and tap it to do one of 4 things. Discard a card, you gain 4 life, pay 1 life, create a 0/1 goat creature token, sacrifice a creature, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand, and sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. So depending on the situation that you're in, each of these can be very valuable. And then there's Staff of Nim, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card, and we can tap it to deal 1 damage to any target. Next up, there's Ghirapur Orrery, which says each player may play an additional land on each of their turns. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. And another artifact that can help us draw 3 cards is Lore Seeker's Stone. It has pay 3 and tap it, draw 3 cards. This ability costs 1 more to activate for each card in your hand. So the quicker that we can actually dump out our hand, the easier this is to activate. And finally, we've got 2 creatures that can actually help us out as well with Endbringer and Sandstone Oracle. We untap Endbringer during each other player's untap step and can do one of 3 things. It can tap and deal 1 damage to target creature or player. We can pay a colorless and tap it, and target creature can't attack or block this turn, and we pay colorless and tap it to draw a card. And then when Sandstone Oracle enters the battlefield, we choose an opponent, and if that player has more cards in him than us, we draw cards equal to the difference. Now, we've talked a lot about our own plans, but how do we throw a wrench into our opponents? Let's find out in tactic number 7, Wreck It. First up, we've got Warping Whale, which is very flexible. It says, choose one. Exile target creature with power or toughness 1 or less. Counter target sorcery spell, or put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi sign creature token onto the battlefield it has. Sacrifice this creature, add colors to your mana pool. And then there's Scour for Existence, which costs 7, but it is an instant that can exile target permanent. Next up, there's Gruesome Slaughter, which says, until end of turn, colorless creatures you control gain tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. So let's can turn our commander and some of our other big creatures into killing machines. And then we've got Duplicate, which has Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, we can exile target non-token creature, and as long as the card exiled with Duplicate is a creature card, Duplicate has the power, toughness, and creature types of the last creature card exiled with Duplicate. It's still a shapeshifter. So this can essentially come down, take out the biggest threat on the board, and become a big threat itself. Next up, there's Meteor Golem, which says, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Finally, there's Steel Hellkite, which is a 5/5 flyer. We can pay 2 to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. But most importantly, it has pay X, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn, activates ability only once each turn. So in many scenarios, this can really decimate one of our opponents. Now, I've mentioned that we've got threats outside of our commander, so let's talk about some of those. So let's start with a few of them in tactic number 8, So Metal. First up, we've got Mere Battlesphere, which is a 4/7 that also comes with some friends. When it comes into play, we create 4 1/1 Mere artifact creature tokens. On top of that, whenever it attacks, we can tap X untap Mirror we control, and if we do, Mere Battlesphere gets +X/+0 until end of turn and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. And then we've got Traxos Scourge of Brew, which is a 7/7 with trample for just 4 mana. Now, it does enter the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during our untap step, but it also has whenever we cast a historic spell, we untap Traxos. With the number of artifacts that we're running in this deck, Traxos just essentially has pseudo-vigilance. Next up, we've got Metalwork Colossus, which is a 10/10 for 11 mana, but it does cost X less to cast, where X is the total converted mana cost of non-creature artifacts we control. We can also sacrifice 2 artifacts to return Metalwork Colossus from our graveyard to our hand. So this is a huge threat that we can cast for free most of the time, and we can keep getting it back. And finally, we're going to be running Darksteel Juggernaut, which is a star indestructible for 5. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of artifacts we control, and it attacks each combat if able. So this is extremely hard to deal with and is just going to grow throughout the game. Now, I did mention that we'd have some Eldrazi threats in this deck, so it's time for us to move on to tactic number 9, Annihilate. First up, we've got Conduit of Ruin, which is just a 5/5, but it's got a lot of utility for this deck. When we cast it, we can search our library for a colorless creature card with converted mana cost 7 or greater, reveal it, then shuffle our library and put that card on top of it. And the first creature spell that we cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. So this is a tutor that also reduces the cost of some of our spells. Next up, there's Desolation Twin, which is a 10/10 for 10, but it also comes with a 10/10 friend. And then Breaker of Armies is a 10/8, and it says all creatures able to block Breaker of Armies do so. So this is a fantastic way to get all of our creatures through on one player. Next up, there's Deceiver Form, which is an 8/8 that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, reveal the top card of your library. If a creature card is revealed this way, you may have creatures you control other than Deceiver Form become copies of that creature until end of turn. You may put that card on the bottom of your library. So basically, if we get one of our big threats on top, we can decimate our opponents. This is especially effective with our threats that have Annihilator. Hand of Emrakul is a 7/7 that costs 9, but it's got Annihilator 1. That means that whenever this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices a permanent. And then Ulamog's Crusher takes that a step further by being an 8/8 with Annihilator 2. Now, it attacks each combat if able, but we want to attack with this because, yeah, Annihilator's great. And then there's Bane of Galagad, which doesn't technically have Annihilator, but it's kind of like Annihilator, because whenever it attacks, the defending player exiles 2 permanents that they control. And then Artisan of Kozilek is a 10/9 with Annihilator 2, and it says when you cast this spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is a huge threat that can get back another huge threat, so yeah, that's really good. But perhaps our biggest threat, though, is Pathrazor of Ulamog. It's a 9/9 with Annihilator 3 for 11 mana, and it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. So yeah, having to sacrifice 3 permanents and being hard to block is pretty huge. Now, all these cards are fantastic, but we still just have one more to go over. So it's time for us to move on to tactic number 10, If All Else Fails. And that card, of course, is going to be the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the number 1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Dragon Throne of Tarkir. It's an equipment that costs 4, and it costs 3 to equip. It says equip creature as defender and pay 2 and tap it. Other creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. Again, with this deck, we want to be able to win with Voltron or with other threats. And this card helps us do both. If we have a huge threat like an Eldrazi on the table, we can use this to pump our entire team, including our commander. That's probably going to turn our commander into a 2 or even 1-shot kill. Or we can use this the other way too. If we've got a ton of threats on our board and our commander is huge, we can use our commander to pump our entire team. So we're essentially utilizing all the equipment that are pumping our commander to help pump our team and send them through to win. This card can help us out in a big way in a lot of situations, and that's why it's the Golden Pig. Again, a huge thanks to Zane for picking Hope of Ghirapur. I had a fantastic time building this deck. But now let's see how our deck compares in cost, so it's time for us to move on to the price breakdown. The average Hope of Ghirapur EDH rec deck will set you back $182.40. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $43.99. And with all that money that you're going to be saving, let's move on to some potential reasonable upgrades for this deck. First up, let's add in Soul of New Phyrexia by taking out Desolation Twin. Next up, let's add in Worn Power Stone by taking out Prying Blade. And then let's add in Mystic Forge by taking out Ghirapur Orrery. Next up, let's add in Soul Ring by taking out Sisei's Ring. And then let's add in Thran Dynamo by taking out Urgolem's Eye. Finally, let's add in Gilded Lotus by taking out Dreamstone Hedron. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this deck tech are. Would you have taken things in a different direction, or did you like this one? So yeah, let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks again, and have a good one.